Good evening, everybody. Thank you for hopping on tonight's Doc Talk. We have none other than the Vice President of Research and Development with us, Lisa Barnes, who is also one of the masterminds behind this incredible Mindbody GLP-1 activation system. I'm going on, I think it's 10 or 11 weeks now on the system, and I'm holding steady at 16 pounds down. And many inches. The last time I checked, I was 4.5 inches off my waist. It has done nothing but change my life in a way that it's hard to even explain. I thought activation was amazing and I felt amazing until I started this system. And what I've been experiencing is absolutely life changing to the point where I could jump out of my skin. I'm so excited because I want everybody to be on this. And I hope that you guys are all tuned in and ready to hear about all things GLP-1 as Lisa's going to do a deep dive for us and run through a slide deck, as well as touch on the importance of being activated with at least NRF2. Also, she's going to touch on liquid collagen and some other things. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. We will open up at the end. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Lisa. I so much appreciate you coming on tonight and doing this for us.
Oh, I am glad to join everyone. I'm glad to chat about this. Like you said, it's a nice break from everything going on in the world and just a chance to share something truly incredible that we've all been experiencing over this past month because October was something that I couldn't have even imagined. We knew that we had something that was exciting when we were getting ready to launch it, but we didn't realize how ready the world was for it and how much it would explode. Like you should hear it on the halls of corporate here. We are amazed at what you guys have done with this product and how you've spread the word and the stories that we are hearing about this. It's just phenomenal. And we're so grateful for everything we've been hearing and keep sharing all of the success, all of the wins, all of the experiences. We love hearing what this product is doing for you. So kind of the plan for today, let's talk about what GLP-1 is, kind of some thoughts as we were developing the system. We'll walk through some of the testing as well, including the clinical testing, some of what to expect, and then going to go into why Healthy Glow is the perfect addition for someone who's on the system or for someone who's maybe waiting to get on this system. Why is it the perfect prep product? So let me go ahead. Oh, I just need you to let me share and I can share my slide. Okay, I'll be able to do it now. Here we go. Okay, we'll skip me because you know what I look like. Okay, here we go. GLP-1 is where it started. And what is GLP-1? A lot of you may be familiar by this point with what GLP-1 is, but a lot of the world still isn't. So what is GLP-1? Keeping it simple. It's a hormone, it's produced in the gut, and it's going to regulate your appetite and blood sugar levels. It's going to promote those feelings of fullness and slow down the rate at which food leaves the stomach. So ultimately, it's acting as this wonderful regulating mechanism that allows you to make smart choices with your diet and what you put inside your body. A key to the hormone is where it's produced in that lower GI tract, because that was incredibly important to us as we were formulating this product, because you can choose the best ingredients in the world, but if you don't choose the right ingredients that will get where they need to go to produce the action you want to happen, your product will do nothing. And so knowing where this hormone was produced was incredibly important during formulation. And then it's important to realize that at ideal levels, you're going to be less likely to overeat or succumb to cravings. However, like with everything in our body, nothing is ever at ideal because of the world we live in. And we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. But what I want to touch on is, like, we tend to equate GLP-1 very specifically with weight because of some of the synthetic options that are available on the market. We think, okay, it's a wonder drug, it's this wonder target, all about the weight. But what is incredibly important to me and why we pick GLP-1 as a hormone is not only its weight impact, because really, honestly, losing weight and healthy weight is a beautiful side effect of balancing this hormone, but there are so many far-reaching benefits that you need to consider as you're looking at GLP-1 activation, which is why it makes this the right product for everyone and not just for people who are looking to lose weight. So there is a benefit to everyone to having balanced GLP-1. So let's go into some of those whole body benefits. So kind of tying to blood sugar, like I mentioned on the last slide, it does support that sustained and balanced glucose response. But the next two that make me incredibly excited, it's involved in the health of lots of key organs: heart, liver, kidneys, fat, pancreas, skeletal muscles. It is a hormone that impacts your whole body health. And if you can bring it back into balance, you can impact whole body health with, once again, a side effect of losing weight and getting that kind of ideal weight for you, but longer term benefits. Because at LifeVantage, we're not just thinking short term. We aren't just thinking about what you're going to see on the scale in X number of weeks. We want to look at your health long term. We want you to be able to live the life that you want to live, achieve the things you want to achieve, and not have your health or your body be a barrier to you achieving that. And GLP-1 being balanced helps you accomplish this. And it also, when it's balanced, it's helping to support brain and nerve health by its potent antioxidant properties. So those are the neuroprotective benefits. So even if you don't have this particular need to lose weight, you want these full body health benefits of GLP-1. And that's what made it such an attractive target. But the other thing that made it really attractive to us is, like, the differentiator for LifeVantage is activation. And activation, we've been preaching it for months. What is activation? Take it to make it. So when we're looking at creating a new product, if I can't have you take something and then have your body make something, it's not the right product for LifeVantage. It's not the right approach. We look at what your body, what is out of balance, what has been lowered, what has been heightened, and then we look at what we can give your body to help your body be brought back into balance. And that is an important part of our differentiator. We're not just bridging nutritional gaps. We're not just putting a short-term Band-Aid on as a fix. We are looking at the source and supporting your body's processes to get them back the way they've always been intended to perform. Now, going back to what can lower it, because we know we're not at ideal levels of many things, including GLP-1, and what influences that? It's a lot of the things that we all face: age, stress, the nutrition of our food. One of my scientists on my R&D team, he talks about, and I know you guys are all familiar with this, like the quality of our food, how that has shifted over decades, centuries, from what it used to be and how nutritious it used to be to where we're at now. And there are just so many gaps that we are not getting from our diet anymore that is influencing our health down at the cellular level. And then also just a sedentary lifestyle. So all of these will impact how GLP-1 is lowered. Now, there are a lot of other approaches that you will find. I always joke about it, and I said it when I was in Kansas City. You can literally say the words, whisper the words GLP-1, and your phone will pop up about 50 different ads. I guarantee I could pull up Facebook right now, and all my ads will be GLP-1 products, different solutions, be it synthetic or other activators that they're trying to get your business. So let's talk through some of these other approaches to GLP-1, because that helps understand what our difference is if you understand what is out there currently. So looking at other approaches, first it is the synthetic. That's what brought GLP-1 into the limelight. That's what made it more of a household name. And there was a purpose for it. It's developed for very specific conditions. But because it is very potent and developed for treatment, because it is a drug, it can lead to very unpleasant side effects because there is a prolonged mechanism of action. So we never want to demonize treatment when it's needed, but what we always want to do is provide other options so that they're available. If you don't need this level of treatment, if you're looking for a natural approach, if you're looking for something after you've transitioned off of it, there's a lot of places for the drug to live, but there's a huge space for natural GLP-1 activation where it is needed, because synthetic is not the solution for the majority of individuals. It's just the one that's been the loudest, and it's the one that's been very distributed and talked about by celebrities and news and everywhere you've looked. But we want to make sure people know that there's not just one way to GLP-1 activation. There's other options that they can pursue. So then looking at these other activators, we saw a flurry of them on the market prior to our launch, and we were keeping track of every single one of them. I have a very long spreadsheet that's very detailed that I had my team update all the time, so we always knew what was coming out there. And here are some trends we saw. So we saw the first ones that put GLP-1 in their name. They took product they already had on their shelf, typically, and they just added GLP-1 to the name. Usually they were blood sugar products, or they were some sort of fiber, and they're like, oh, there's a tie in the literature somewhere. Let's go ahead and capitalize upon this trend. But because they turned it around so quickly, no studies, no clinically backed ingredients in those formulas. So maybe there was some sort of benefit, but nothing that could be proven. And so that was one. We saw some people were using really good ingredients, but we could see their labels, and we know where the clinical testing has been performed because studies are available publicly for a lot of these ingredients. And we would look at a blend and see an ingredient that's in there, and the blend itself would be a lower amount than one of the ingredients needed to be efficacious. So right when we saw that, we're like, okay, someone maybe had a little bit of a budget concern or a COGS concern as they were developing this formula, and they had to lower it down. And that can be okay if you can back it up with your own clinical studies, and you can say, hey, like my blend works fantastic, but these brands would not have that backup. So they just had lower than efficacious amounts. They would not have the clinical studies, as I mentioned. Still, even after we've launched, you just don't see any sort of research coming out. There sometimes is a touting of ingredient studies, but you're not seeing whole formula studies. And what's important about that, and why you want to look for full whole formula studies, is that when you start putting ingredients together, a few things can happen. Nothing can happen. They can each just have their individual effects, all the ingredients. Two, you can have beautiful synergies, and that's really what you want when you put together a formula, because you want to have a reason to take this product. But third, you can actually have ingredients that counteract each other. And unless you test it, you don't know how the final formula will perform. You don't know what it will actually look like in real people's lives. And that's why it's so important to look for clinical studies with the entire formula, with everything put together in the correct dosages. And another thing we saw was just complicated usage instructions. So there'd be like, hey, take 3 capsules before breakfast and before lunch and before dinner, and maybe up it if you need to. Or here's my 5 different products in the system. Take this bar here and this shake here and this, and this. And it just became something that took over your life. And what was incredibly important to me and the team as we developed our response to GLP-1 activation was that we did not want to trade one fixation, which is like feeling overcome with food noise, with another fixation, which is a very rigid, overpowering system of products or schedule of products that takes over your life. Because what you are looking for is something that fits into your life, something that serves you versus something that you serve. And with those complicated systems, you really you serve those systems, because everything in your life ends up surrounding and focused on that system, because you have to keep the exact usage instructions. Because I grew up in the South, and all of our family gatherings, or any gatherings we had, was always around food. And you could always tell the people that were on the very complicated diet plan. So think back to the 90s, early 2000s when I was growing up. You'd see the people with their shakes or the people with their specific bars, and they kind of sit off to the side because everyone else is eating the yummy Southern food, and they're kind of sitting over with their shake or counting their points. And they just were outside. They were siloed away from community. And that's why those kind of diets are never long-term solutions, because anything that silos you away from community is not a long-term solution. Once again, you need to have a solution that fits into your life that you can see yourself doing long-term, that works on your terms. And that was incredibly important. Another thing that was incredibly important before I go into our solution was the approach we took as far as how we talk about this kind of product. Because once again, being a product of for me specifically, of the 90s and early 2000s and the horrible diet culture that I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, I've seen, and my team had seen, how shame-based it could be, where your worth was determined by your appearance or by a number on the scale. There was not a focus on health. If you looked fine, no one cared how healthy you were. You just had the right appearance. So you got more opportunities, more attention, more what we told ourselves, more love, more. And that was not like, we've moved past that, and we wanted to ensure as we created our system that we were focused on health. And that's once again why GLP-1 is our target, because of its vast overall overarching health benefits beyond just weight loss. Because we're not just focused on helping you get to a certain appearance. We are focused on helping you optimize your health through activation of all of your systems so that you can live your best self, whatever that looks like. And that was important to us as we created this system. So kind of setting that stage a little bit for what we were thinking as we created this system. So our solution was the Mindbody GLP-1 system, and we landed on 2 products. Now, being completely honest, we started with 5 products. We were looking at a bunch of different angles of how we could tackle GLP-1 activation. What else could we use to support it? What else could we do? But what I loved about our team was we had these 5 different concepts, and then we started looking at each other and we said, okay, how does that fit into your routine? Do we want to have 4 drinks? Do we want to have X, Y, and Z? What do we actually need? What is necessary for GLP-1 activation? And we kept removing and removing and removing and removing until we landed here, because we didn't want to just create products to create products. We wanted to create the right products to be able to address GLP-1 at the source, and not just a bunch of superfluous products just to have you on more products or have all these support products. We wanted to have a core of what was actually necessary. Now, looking at quickly what our benefits are, this is what you can find on our website. We have the naturally increases GLP-1, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Helping support sustainable weight loss and wellness, balancing hunger hormones, which is incredibly important because it's not just GLP-1. I think we also get very focused on whatever is trendy, and GLP-1's trendy, and it's a great target, but we also need to be looking at what are the other pieces of this complicated gut-brain axis that we need to influence to be able to truly optimize that gut-brain connection, that crosstalk that happens between our brain and our gut. And then it also helps quiet food noise, which is, I know, an effect that a lot of people have experienced. Usually that's the first one that they start experiencing. And then helping to maintain blood sugar levels already within a normal, healthy range. Now, getting into what makes us very unique from other products that may talk about activation, because activation has become a pretty trendy term, but what we always have to go back to is we are the activation company because that's what we went that way first. We looked to the root first, and we have a very specific meaning of what we mean by activation. We don't use it just to use a word. We have a definition for it, take it to make it, going to that root source. So what makes our activator so different from other people that claim GLP-1 activation? So first, dual activation. So others may be claiming to activate, and like I said, they typically do not have any sort of in vitro or human clinical data to prove that they can activate anything, but they are using the words. But we not only activate, we work through 2 complementary pathways, dual activation. So you have our MB core. So we have our capsules here. They directly activate GLP-1 in L cells. And L cells are those cells, specialized cells that are in the gut where GLP-1 is made. And so the ingredients in core, and we'll go through them in just a second, directly activate GLP-1. And then we have our MB Enhance, which helps to indirectly activate GLP-1. And it's working through the gut microbiome. Because if you feed the gut microbiome the right food, it's going to produce short-chain fatty acids, which will fuel GLP-1 production. So you're not only telling your LL cells one way to produce GLP-1, you're also creating an optimal environment so that that GLP-1 production is optimized. And that's how we end up with the results we end up with, is because we don't take a singular approach to GLP-1 activation. We don't put all of our pennies in one bucket. We take multiple approaches to be able to get the results we're looking for. And that allows for benefits for more people, because you never know what exactly is out of balance in their system that is causing GLP-1 to be out of balance. So we want to approach it from multiple pathways. Now, going into some of the ingredients, here's some of the key ones in our MB core. So we have our lemon bioflavonoids, chromium. You can see all of these. They actually all have their own distinct mechanism of action for how they directly activate GLP-1, directly activate those L cells to produce GLP-1. One thing I love about this formula is that multiple ingredients in this formula had their own clinical testing already showing efficacy, but then when we put all the ingredients together, the results we were seeing really outshone what the ingredients did on their own, which just is a real testament to my team who put together the formulas, showing how they had a real synergistic mindset as they were putting these together and looked at, here's complementary pathways, how can we boost this efficacy? And then we see our MB Enhanced, so our powder, and you can see that that's a combination of resistant potato starches, tapioca fibers, kombucha. You can read all the ingredients on the screen. One thing I want to highlight here is the word resistant. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, which is location matters. Now, GLP-1 is produced in L cells, which is in the lower GI. And what happens with normal fibers? So if you just take any sort of fiber, they get digested earlier. They don't make their way down to that lower GI, to the colon. So that's where resistant comes in, resistant to digestion. So they are able to get to the lower GI microbiome, and they are able to feed the microorganisms there, the microbiome, to produce the short chain fatty acids to fuel GLP-1 production. So once again, it's about choosing not only ingredients that sound good, but it's about choosing the right ingredients to get to the right place in the body to have the intended effect. And that's just really intentional formulation and being very particular about what ingredients we put together there. Now, I mentioned dual activation, so two ways of activating L cells. We also have dual amplification, so even more reasons why we are very different from everyone else out there is that this system, through its synergies, will amplify GLP-1 production by increasing the receptors for GLP-1 and decreasing the enzyme that breaks down GLP-1. And we'll go through the in vitro in a second, but the important thing to know about GLP-1 is it's a hormone, and it needs to bind to a receptor to be able to have the intended effects. So if you increase GLP-1, but you don't have increased places for it to bind to, you're not going to see increased effect. Also, DPP-4 is the enzyme that breaks down GLP-1. If you have increased GLP-1, but you haven't decreased DPP-4, and once again, it's a balance. We're never going to completely get rid of any enzymes that break down because it is a balance, but it's bringing that more into balance so that you can have more GLP-1 that binds and has more effects. So we lower that DPP-4 enzyme so we have less breaking down of GLP-1. Now going into the results that show why we can talk about dual amplification and dual activation. So we'll start with our in vitro study, and that was performed in our L cells. And just a note, all of the studies, if you haven't found already, if you go to our the web page for the Mindbody GLP-1 system, scroll down, there's some clinical results there. There's a click here to learn more about the science. That leads you to our science landing page, which details this study and also the human clinical as well. It On the main page itself, it walks you through some of it. There's a video that walks through it if that's more your learning speed, like how you want to get information, and there's white papers that write it up. One thing to note about the white papers, because we get this question sometimes, is we are patent pending, so we don't have every single little tiny detail in those write-ups until we have our patent granted. So it's not exhaustive on the write-ups, but there's a lot of really helpful information describing how we did both our in vitro and our human clinical that you can glean from there and understand the substantiation for these products. Now, going into the in vitro study, we look specifically at L cells, and we wanted to see how they synergistically work, because we always need to understand how our products work before we even put them in the human body. We want to understand the mechanism of action because we want to know how we're increasing GLP-1. Like, what are we doing to do so? Because there's a lot of steps that lead to increased GLP-1 production. So how are we doing that? And so first thing I'll just note is we did see in our in vitro study a 54% increase in GLP-1 production. That's different than the 140%, and the reason why is it's in cells. So we started in cells, we moved to human, and we'll talk about that in a second. But in cells, we saw a fantastic 54% increase in GLP-1 production. And you can see that through the luminescence here. There's green fluorescence showing increased GLP-1 production in L cells. We did some staining there so you can see it. But we did see that 54% increase, which let us know that there was beautiful synergies between these two products, and it was actually working as intended. Because if it didn't activate GLP-1, it would have been back to the drawing board, which would have been horrible. So I'm glad that my team researched a very thoroughly researched the ingredients they put together and built a fantastic formula so that we saw success when we went into our in vitro study, which then translated to our human clinical. But that was our first step. Does it produce GLP-1? Check. We can continue to move forward. Now, how does it make GLP-1? So you'll see some things out there where companies will claim to increase the GLP-1 gene. Now, just to clarify, there is no GLP-1 gene. It is not expressed from a gene. Now, how you make GLP-1 is you have a precursor protein called proglucagon, which is a large protein, and then there's an enzyme that comes and breaks it up into active proteins, active hormones. And that's where GLP-1, GLP-2, and others come in there. And so in order to increase GLP-1, you need to go back to the starting material, which is this proglucagon, and it is encoded for by a gene, GCG, which we increased by 95%. So more gene, more proglucagon, more starting material. But if you have more starting material and you don't have enough enzyme to break it into active pieces, still not going to see the effect you're looking for. So we also saw an increase in the gene that encodes for the enzyme that cleaves that proglucagon larger protein into active GLP-1, and that was by 32%. And then going back to that dual amplification portion we just talked about, we saw genes that increase, that influence and activate GLP-1 receptors. So there's a specific gene called GLP-1R, which we increased by 53%, which ultimately promoted GLP-1 receptors, an increase in them. And then we saw a 38% decrease in DPP4 gene expression. So that means leads to less enzyme, which means more active GLP-1 in the body. We also not only looked at GLP-1 because we wanted to see all these different pieces along the pathway, but we also wanted to see some complementary neuropeptides. And that's where PPY and PYY came in, because they are key signalers along this gut-brain axis, and they need to be upregulated as well so that you are optimizing that communication between the gut and the brain. So PPY, an increase of 1,280%, PYY, an increase of 55%. More neuropeptides, more communication around that gut-brain axis. Now, we started with the in vitro study, but we wanted to ensure that we wanted to understand how the products would perform in individuals. So that's when we moved into our human clinical. We looked for individuals that are not on any LifeVantage products, so non-activated folks, because they would be a beautiful baseline to just see what this product did itself. And so here's a summary of all the clinical results, and let's walk through all of them. So it's a 12-week clinical study. That's important, and we'll talk about that more in a second. We saw an 140% average increase in GLP-1. Now that's through blood serum. So we were taking blood, and that was over 12 weeks. So that's the average at 12 weeks. We saw a steady increase over the course of the study. And so that 140% is an average at 12 weeks. And no, that the increases did vary by person, but 140% is the average. And it's not skewed by just like a couple people that had really high increases. It's a nice median as well. We also saw an average weight loss of 9 pounds in 8 weeks, and then up to 25 pounds in 12 weeks. One of the things we were looking for in weight loss was sustainable weight loss, a couple pounds a week. We didn't want anything drastic, because if we saw a lot of drastic changes, then we would know that people were maybe not getting the nutrition they needed to. They had just stopped. They were taking drastic diet steps. We wanted them to make gradual changes as a result of the product. We wanted them to feel the satiety. We wanted them to have less cravings and make better choices, which would influence their weight. But we didn't just want them to like have a steep decrease immediately. We wanted it to be more sustained, so it would be able to be longer lasting and more sustainable in general for them. We also didn't see any decrease in muscle over the study, which was really positive for us. We saw up to 5% total body fat percentage lost, and then up to 27% visceral fat lost. The other thing that I really liked about the study was some of the subjective testimonials, because it's how people feel. It's how it's changing their perception. And so we saw people taking back their relationship with food, decreased sugar cravings so they can make better choices. We see people choosing smaller portions. So they're still eating the food they love. They're just able to eat a little bit less of it because they're getting fuller faster and listening to their body more. We see people that felt less hungry, ate less at meals, and then eating more for health instead of just emotions. Because once again, balancing that connection, that relationship with food, so that you can pass by something that normally you wouldn't be able to resist picking up and eating, and be able to say, do I need this? Do I want this now? And be able to work through that versus just giving into the craving immediately, giving you more control. Because so often food noise and cravings can take control over you. We wanted you to be in control of it. Now, one thing I want to note about 12 weeks, that is what these results are from. And I feel like with weight loss products, there's been an expectation set by our diet culture that you need to expect results week 1. And if you don't see results in week 1, you need to just pass it up. And that is such an unhealthy mindset, especially when you are bringing something back into balance, which involves optimizing your gut microbiome, because you do not know where your body is at as far as its health at this point. You don't know where you are at with your journey. Like, where is your gut microbiome right now? You may think it is pretty good, but there may be a lot of things that are disrupting it, and it may take a little bit of time for it to be able to right itself, to balance, to be able to then allow you to have this balanced gut-brain axis and experience these changes. I was just talking this morning with Dr. Jess Bueller from my SAB. We were on Momentum Live this morning, and she did a beautiful job of explaining that whenever she sees anyone with any changes from taking this system, be it losing weight or better relationship with food, or even gaining a little bit of weight or experiencing a few things, she is happy because their body is changing, and change is good. It means that their body is readjusting. Now, it's not always the most comfortable to let your body adjust because you want to see straight progress, but you need to give yourself grace that you may experience a little bit of like maybe a pound or 2 of weight gain before everything's in balance, before you're on your course. You may experience a little bit of time for all your hormones to get into balance. You may experience a little bit for your gut to be able to adjust to increased fiber intake, because with our American diet, we're horrible at getting the right fiber intake. And so our digestive systems aren't incredibly healthy. And so even though the fiber in this product is well within normal daily values that we're supposed to be having, we're nowhere near that with what we're getting in our diet. And so maybe someone will need to ramp up a little bit slower with the MB Enhance. What everyone needs to always note and remember is that their journey is their journey because their body is different. This is not a comparison game to everyone else. So you want to look to your left and right and be like, this person's losing, this person's experiencing, this is, but you need to look at what your journey is. And so there may be different things that you see compared to what they see, and you just need to be patient because this study was 12 weeks. Nobody except Club 55 who's getting close. Those original individuals who were on our product trial, they're getting close to the 12 weeks. The most anyone's been on it beyond them is just a month. So your body takes time to adjust. You need to have some patience and not compare yourself to others. And so I think that's the message. And then the other message is change is good. You're going to experience different things as your body changes, and it's all normal as it adjusts. And then as you get into balance, everything's going to be working the way it should, but it will be on a different timeline for everyone. So note these clinical study results of 12 weeks and encourage people that maybe aren't experiencing within a week what they're hoping for to have patience and allow their bodies to adjust. So just a quick PCA on that because, or PSA, because I feel like I've been hearing some of that where people are expecting a weight loss week 1 on the scale, and they're so focused on the scale, so focused on the scale, and they need to be looking beyond the scale or make sure they have a scale that looks at composition as well, so you can see all of the changes that your body's making. I would also encourage measurements and other ways of checking in with yourself to see how your journey is progressing. So with all of that, that's MB, but I do want to go into a little bit more of one of our other powerful activation duos and how it really ties in with MB. Whether you're on MB currently or you're waiting to be on MB and you're hoping to start soon, and this is the perfect time to prep. Because one of the things that impacts weight is cellular stress. And on my next slide here we have how cellular stress impacts weight loss. So if you have cellular stress, it can impact glucose uptake by cells. It can disrupt metabolic processes. It can disrupt the balance of hunger hormones, and that sounds very familiar. It can increase fat accumulation. It can impact physical activity because you're not being able to move the way you want to move. Because ultimately, cellular stress leads to dysfunctional cells, which leads to dysfunctional organs, which leads to dysfunctional bodies. Because so often we have these very physical symptoms or things we're experiencing, and we just try to take care of the symptoms. And that's very much how our healthcare operates. It's a very symptomatic approach, instead of not always looking at what the root of it is. What is causing this dysfunctional body? What is causing this dysfunctional system, dysfunctional organ? It all goes back to dysfunctional cells. And when cells are dysfunctional, they tend to send off signals of distress for the immune system to come help them because they're not running the way they should be. They're not being able to function to their full abilities, and so they feel like they're under attack because they are not functioning. And so they call for the immune system, and the immune system comes, and the immune system is not delicate. The immune system comes in and has a very strong response and can leave a lot of collateral damage behind it, which we can also feel in our physical bodies. And our cells get stuck in those cycles. They're constantly sending out those signals because they're constantly dysfunctional. And until we break that cycle of cellular stress, until that root cause is addressed, you're not going to be able to experience the results that you're wanting. And so applying this specifically to MB, if your goal is to lose weight, but your body is under all of this cellular stress, you're going to be fighting more of an uphill battle because it's not only just about balancing your GLP-1, you need your cells to be performing the way they're supposed to. You need to have functional cells. So, in order to accelerate, optimize, really achieve the results you're looking for, you need to be breaking that cellular stress cycle so that your cells are primed to be able to support your goals, such as weight loss. And that's just one example, because cellular stress impacts your body globally, and it impacts every system, tissue, and organ. And so this is just one specific, since we're talking about MB, but it is a very global. But you want to break that cellular stress so you can have balanced glucose uptake. You can have balanced metabolic processes, balanced hunger hormones. You can be able to move the way you want to. And so that is a target that you can use to enhance your results or, once again, prep your body to use this amazing system. So thankfully, we have an amazing duo that has synergistic benefits to break that cellular stress cycle, which is healthy glow. So that's Protandim Nerve 2, True Science Liquid Collagen. On their own, Protandim Nerve 2 helps you make antioxidants because your body slows down the production of them as you age. Collagen decreases in your 20s. So True Science Liquid Collagen helps you make your own collagen, not just replenishing it through supplements. But the magic in these two, the science in these two really come in the combination. They come in the synergies that we've seen in our mRNA sequencing study, where we saw that there was this breaking of the cellular stress cycle, the reduction of that NF-kappa B and those signaling cytokines, helping to break the cellular stress so that you're not having this constant alarm being sent out to your body. You're not constantly facing that collateral damage from the immune system being in a constant state of alert. You're having cells that are able to cycle properly and recover and repair and start working the way they're supposed to, so that you are able to support your journey from a cellular level. Because even though we tend to look at our bodies and just see the external symptoms, we are ruled by so much more. We are so ruled down to the cellular level. So much of the health of our cells impacts the health of our body, and it so often gets overlooked. And so just my kind of parting message before we kind of get into our Q&A is, if you're excited about MB, which you should be because it's phenomenal, you should be equally excited about Healthy Glow because they have that perfect marriage that's going to help you achieve your health goals, help you address health from the cellular level, bringing hormones back into balance, bringing cells back into functionality so that everything is working the way it should, and you are able to lose the weight you need to lose, maintain the weight that you need to maintain. You are able to optimize how you feel and how you show up and how you are able to achieve your goals. So with that, I think we can start some Q&A.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. That was absolutely phenomenal, and I so much appreciate your time. Let me go ahead and stop for now.